Ex-wife cheated on me when my brother died, divorced me, and then claimed her child was mine 3 years later. I'm going to use fictitious identities and a disposable account here, since I don't want anyone I know to discover this. I'm Chris, 37 years old, and I work as a financial analyst. I've done well for myself, and I have an excellent job at a reputable firm. My family has always been important to me, and I've always been the elder brother who takes responsibility. Growing up, my younger brother Ryan and I were close. We were diametrically opposed in many respects, with me being the steady one. Ryan was the wild child who couldn't stop having fun, but it never interfered with our friendship. Ryan was a troublemaker, yet he was a wonderful person. He had a habit of getting into the most ludicrous situations, yet he was always there for me when it counted. I adored him, despite the fact that he never appeared to take life as seriously as I did. Then there is Chelsea. She is now 35, and we were married for 7 years. From the outside, we appeared to be doing well. We chose not to have children, but we had a good life together. Or so I thought. Everything changed the day my brother Ryan died. It was a motorbike accident, one of those bizarre occurrences that you never see coming until it is too late. I got the call at work, and my heart simply stopped. They told me to get to the hospital, and I went there in a haze, hoping it wasn't as horrible as it sounded. When I arrived, I was greeted with the kind of spectacle you only see in nightmares. The doctors informed me that Ryan had lost control of his bike and collided with a guardrail. He was gone before the ambulance arrived. They allowed me to see him. Despite the bandages and tubes, I could scarcely recognize him. They had to amputate both his legs because they were barely holding on. I just stood there staring, trying to convince myself that it was not real. But it was. My parents were inconsolable. My mother in particular repeatedly asked, "Why him, why my baby?" My father, who had always been a strong figure, crumpled and cried while attempting to calm my mother down. I felt like I had to keep it together for them, to be the strong one, but within, I was breaking apart. Chelsea was there as well. She held my hand and said all the right things, attempting to console me in all the appropriate ways. At the moment, I felt grateful. I considered her a good wife. After Ryan's death, I was not myself. I shut down emotionally and focused on making sure everything was taken care of. I handled the funeral arrangements, assisted my parents in coping with their loss, and attempted to keep everything together. I didn't have enough energy for anything else. The funeral was a haze. I recall feeling numb as I stood near Ryan's casket. As individuals approached to express their condolences, I was too fatigued to feel anything, let alone consider how this was impacting Chelsea. My anguish and the need to be present for my parents overtook me entirely. I hadn't realized how much I was drifting away from Chelsea. During the weeks following the funeral, I spent the most of my time at my parents' house. They needed me and I needed them. Chelsea attempted to convince me to come home and talk about how I felt, but I couldn't. I couldn't allow myself to feel any more than I was already feeling. It was as if my grief was a great burden that I had to bear. I was unable to share it with anyone, including her. After a few months, I started to regain some sense of normalcy. I returned to work, hoping to get my life back on track. Things between Chelsea and I were different. I knew it, as did she. The barrier between us had widened in the months following Ryan's death, but I was so overwhelmed by grief that I didn't know how to bridge it. I tried, nevertheless. I actually did. I made an effort to reconnect with Chelsea, to return to the way things were before everything went wrong. But she was also distinct. She was distant and frigid. Whenever I tried to talk to her about what was going on, she dismissed me or changed the conversation. It was as if she had built a wall between us, and I had no idea how to knock it down. There were occasions when she was on her phone late at night, and when I asked who she was talking to, she'd become defensive and say it was just a buddy. She started going out more frequently, claiming she needed space and was simply trying to clear her mind. I wanted to believe her, but something didn't feel right. A few months after I first noticed her peculiar behavior, I was alone at home and noticed her phone humming on the table. She was in the shower, and I picked it up without thinking to see who was texting her. That's when I noticed it, a note from someone named Mark. The contents were, to put it mildly, this is explicit. I grabbed screenshots and videos of the discussions and saved them to my own phone. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, but I wanted to be certain. The following day, I hired a private investigator. It felt weird, like something out of a horrible movie, but I wanted to know the truth. I needed to know whether it was just a few texts or something more. A few days later, the PI confirmed my worst suspicions. Chelsea was having an affair with this guy named Mark. They had been seeing each other for some months. When I questioned Chelsea, she initially denied everything. She acted offended, as if I was betraying her by looking through her phone. But I was having none of it. I showed her the screenshots, images, and everything. She sat there, staring at the proof, until she broke down. She admitted all of it. She stated she felt alone and ignored because I was too preoccupied with my sadness to pay attention to her. She claimed she attempted to connect with me, but I kept pushing her away. And maybe she was correct about the last bit. I'd been pushing her away, but I never expected her to turn to someone else. I assumed she would understand that I needed time. She told me she met Mark in a pub one night while I was staying at my parents' apartment. She stated she was lonely, that he was there for her in ways I wasn't, and one thing led to another. I didn't want to hear anything after that. The treachery was too much. I muttered some terrible things about her inability to keep her legs closed while I was mourning my brother. She shot back, stating I was an emotional emptiness, and she didn't know how to contact me anymore. It was ugly. The whole thing was simply ugly. I couldn't remain in that house with her after that. I packed my belongings and returned to my parents' home. They were surprised when I told them what had transpired. I believe they were more disappointed than anything else. Chelsea tried to contact me, apologize, and explain, but I was done. There was no turning back from this. I told our common acquaintances what had happened. I didn't care how she looked, I just wanted everyone to know what she did. And to be honest, I wanted her to feel humiliated for causing me misery. She tried to apologize repeatedly, but I couldn't forgive her. Not after all she had done. She ruined what little we had left of our marriage the instant she decided to cheat on me. Divorce was unavoidable. We recruited lawyers and things rapidly went nasty. We fought over everything: money, the house, even little matters like who would keep the furnishings. Chelsea attempted to seek alimony, claiming that she earned it because she was accustomed to a certain lifestyle, but I wasn't willing to let her take any more from me than she already had. At one point, I discovered she had emptied our joint account. She claimed it was because she needed money to survive, but I knew it was simply another method for her to screw me over. My lawyer fought hard, and we eventually settled. I was able to save the majority of my possessions, but the entire process destroyed me emotionally, financially, and mentally. Chelsea wasn't satisfied with simply making my life horrible during the divorce. She began coming up at my office, raising a fuss and begging me to take her back. She would scream in the lobby until security had to accompany her outside. My coworkers, who had previously respected me, began whispering behind my back. It was humiliating. I had to contact HR to keep her away from my office. She seemed out to wreck every aspect of my existence. After the divorce was finalized, I attempted to go along with my life. I went on a few dates, but nothing seemed right. I was too hurt and outraged to even consider starting anything fresh. My buddies told me I needed to get back out there, but I wasn't prepared. I put myself into my work instead. To distract myself from what had happened, I worked long hours and took on other assignments. I slowly began to heal. The fury subsided, and the hurt began to heal. I knew I'd never forget what Chelsea did to me, but I refused to let it define the rest of my life. According to mutual acquaintances, Chelsea's life following the divorce was not going well. Mark, the guy she had an affair with, left as soon as she told him she was pregnant. I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of satisfaction when I found out. I thought about Karma. She struggled with being a single mother. Financially, things were difficult for her following the divorce. She lost her house and had to relocate into a modest flat. She tried to contact me for assistance, but I ignored her. I was not going to be her savior after what she had done to me. She'd made her bed, and now she had to lie in it. 3 years have gone after the divorce, and much has changed. My career has taken off. I was promoted to a high management position. This came with a significant rise and a gorgeous corner office. I've started dating someone new, Becca, 33F, who is sweet, understanding, and everything Chelsea was not. We've been together for about a year, and things are going well. But then, a few weeks ago, something happened to throw me off balance. A mutual buddy was getting married, and I received an invitation to the ceremony. I hesitated whether or not to attend, but Becca persuaded me that it would be beneficial to show up, have some fun, and see some old friends. So I decided to go. I didn't expect to see Chelsea there. As soon as I walked into the reception area, she was standing by the bar. She'd dropped a lot of weight, and there was a melancholy about her that I hadn't noticed before. Our gazes connected, and for a time we just stared at each other. Then she began heading towards me. She asked if we could talk, and I accepted despite my better judgment. We found a quiet area, and she began telling me about how difficult things had been for her. She described how much she regretted her actions, how Mark abandoned her, and how tough it was to raise a child on her own. She apologized again, saying she realized she didn't have the right to seek for my forgiveness, but she had to try. She even began bringing up memories from our marriage, particularly the good times, as if to remind me of what we once had. It felt as if she was reaching for straws, hoping to reconnect with me again. But all I could think of was the betrayal. As she spoke, I couldn't help but have memories to the day I discovered the affair, But when I looked over at Becca, who was watching us from across the room, I realized I'd moved on. I was not the same person as 3 years ago. I rebuilt my life, found happiness again, and I wasn't about to let Chelsea drag me back into that dark place. I informed Chelsea that I could not reconcile with her. That too much had transpired and too much damage had been done. I assured her I was happy now, that I had moved on, and that she should do the same. She tried to argue that she had changed and could be better, but I remained strong. I was not going to allow her back into my life. She sobbed and began begging, generating a scene. People at the wedding started to notice, but I didn't care. I wasn't going to let her trick me into feeling sorry for what she did to herself. After the wedding, Becca and I discussed what transpired. She was encouraging and understanding, and she never pushed me to discuss anything I wasn't ready to. When I informed her about Chelsea's attempts to reconnect, she simply held my hand and said she was happy of how I handled it. Since then, Chelsea has attempted to contact me several times, but I have ignored her. I am not interested in reopening past hurts. I've established boundaries and want to maintain them. I've moved on, and I won't look back. Here's the part that's truly confusing me right now. Last week, Chelsea sent me a note. In it, she revealed that she feels her child is mine. She stated she didn't want to believe it, but the timing is right, and she wants me to take a DNA test to be sure. I do not know what to do. Part of me believes this is simply one of her machinations, another attempt to re-enter my life. But if there's even a remote chance that this child is mine, I feel obligated to know. So, that's where I am right now. I'm attempting to figure out my next step. I never anticipated I'd be in this scenario, and I have no idea how to manage it. If anyone has had a similar experience or has any advice, I'm all ears. Thank you for reading. I will provide an update whenever I have more information. Final update. Hello Reddit, this is Chris again. First and foremost, I'd like to thank everyone who has read my prior articles and offered advice. I was overwhelmed by the support and many viewpoints you all shared. It helped me think things through during one of the most stressful times in my life. I'm here to offer you the final update on this entire drama, and I hope it provides some closure for everybody who has been following along. To summarize, a few years ago, my wife Chelsea cheated on me while I was grieving my brother's death, and we separated after a bitter legal struggle. I've moved on and am now in a nice relationship with Becca. Chelsea recently reappeared to a mutual friend's wedding and attempted to reconnect. Then she dropped a bombshell, claiming her child could be mine and requesting a DNA test. Chelsea's DNA request left me very perplexed. Part of me wanted to reject it as simply another one of her manipulative techniques, but the idea of becoming a parent was too great to ignore. I couldn't simply sweep it under the rug. Becca and I had a lengthy chat about it. She was sympathetic, but I could sense she was concerned about what this meant for us. I attempted to reassure her, but I was just as concerned. I also talked with a lawyer to ensure that I had covered all bases. He encouraged me to proceed with the DNA test, but to do so through a neutral third party to guarantee that everything was done properly. That way there would be no allegations of tampering or bias. We set up the test, and I attempted to prepare myself for whatever the results might be. The waiting period for the test results was excruciating. Becca and I began to feel the strain almost immediately. There was an underlying tension between us. Every time my phone rang, I was anxious, wondering if it was Chelsea or the lab with the results. Chelsea, meantime, increased her attempts to contact me. She would continually text me, asking whether I had heard anything and making comments about how I should prepare to be a father. I had to block her number just to save my sanity. But even then, she found methods to contact me. Whether through mutual acquaintances or by showing up at my office again. I was already on edge, and her continual pestering only made matters worse. My productivity began to decrease. I couldn't concentrate, couldn't think clearly. It felt like I was living in a nightmare. I was unable to wake up. Just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, there was an unexpected delay in the lab. Apparently there was a mix-up with the samples, and the results would take longer than planned. When I found out, I felt like I was about to burst. Chelsea, of course, used this occasion to accuse me of attempting to tamper with the findings. She sent me a series of unpleasant texts, claiming that I was avoiding my obligations and that I was afraid of the truth. It was complete rubbish, but it got under my skin. The tension was getting to me, and I began snapping at coworkers, including Becca. I could feel myself becoming bitter, and I had no idea how to stop it. Finally, after what seemed like an age, the results arrived. I was at work when I received the email, and I couldn't wait to get home. I opened it right there. And there it was. In plain and white, I wasn't the father. I felt relieved, but it was mingled with a variety of other emotions. Anger at Chelsea for putting me through this, anguish for the child who was being used as a pawn in her games, and irritation that we had waited so long to get here. Chelsea was not pleased when I informed her the results. At first, she tried to reject it, claiming that the test had been tampered with, or that the lab had made an error. She accused me of rigging the findings, which was ludicrous given that we went through a neutral third party. But she didn't hear any of it. She was desperate, and it showed. After a few days of back and forth, in which she insisted on a retest, she appeared to accept reality. Instead of apologizing or backing down, she simply repeated her charges. She began telling others that I was a deadbeat, and that I was leaving my child, despite the fact that I knew the reality. Despite the fact that it was all lies, she continued to propagate them. My lawyer encouraged me to take legal action to protect myself from further harassment. We issued a cease and desist order to Chelsea, requesting that she stop contacting me and disseminating false information. We also discussed the potential of getting a restraining order if she didn't back off. I didn't want to go down that route, but it was becoming evident that I might not have an option. Chelsea, predictably, did not take the cease and desist order seriously. She kept trying to reach me, and she even showed up at my office again, demanding to talk with me. At that point, I realized I needed to take the next move. My lawyer is currently working on obtaining a restraining order to keep her away from me, my house, and my workplace. It's not what I wanted, but it's what I have to do to keep myself safe. This entire incident has taken its toll on my relationship with Becca. She's been fantastic through it all, but I could sense it was wearing on her as well. We had a long heart-to-heart the other night, and she admitted to being insecure and worried about our future. She was scared that the situation with Chelsea might come back to haunt us. I knew where she was coming from and told her so. I promised her that I was dedicated to us and that I would not let Chelsea ruin what we had. But I also admitted that this had been really difficult for both of us, and that we needed to continue communicating if we were to get through it together. It wasn't an easy conversation, but it was important, and I believe it made us both feel more secure going forward. My parents were distraught when they learnt about everything that had happened. They had always liked Chelsea, and while they were disappointed with her after the affair, this new degree of manipulation surprised them. My mother was extremely upset. She couldn't comprehend that someone we had considered family could be so low. When I told my father about Chelsea's charges and the DNA result, he became angry. He claimed he'd always suspected there was something wrong with her, but he never expected her to go this far. It's been difficult for them, too, to watch their son go through all of this, and I know they've been battling to handle it. Our mutual friends' relationships have been strained, to say the least. Some have distanced themselves from Chelsea, particularly after learning about the DNA test and her ongoing abuse. But some appear to be trapped in the middle. I am confused of what to believe. It's been a difficult situation all around, and I've had to accept that some friendships may not survive this. Emotionally, I am still absorbing everything that has occurred. The deception, manipulation, and stress have all been a lot to deal with. I never intended things to get this bad, but I also understand that none of it is my responsibility. One of the most difficult aspects of dealing with the child's predicament has been the guilt I feel. Even though I'm not the father, I feel awful for the child. They didn't choose to be born into this situation, and they are the true victims here. I understand that I have no control over the situation, yet it has been bothering me. In the end, I chose to terminate all relations with Chelsea. There's no purpose in trying to preserve a connection with someone who has caused so much harm. I've blocked her on all fronts, and I'm taking the legal steps necessary to keep her out of my life permanently. I'm extremely grateful to everyone on Reddit for their support. Your guidance, support, and even tough love have helped me see things more clearly and make the correct decisions for myself. Thank you again, everyone. I'll keep going forward, and I hope this post marks the conclusion of this saga. Take care.